All right, this is a little bit different than some of the other stuff we normally do, but we've done this a little bit as far as like we get to the end of a poll video and then we rant about a subject for 10 or 15 minutes. We don't often have a Corvo on the screen, but he's there with Doug. The purpose of this video is to talk about Hoyo games as a whole. Now, I've only dabbled in Third Impact, and I think I'm the only one of us who has, but we're talking the other three right now, which is just to say Genshin, Star Rail, Zenless, because each are going through some issues and some growing pains, some more severe than others. We're going to start with the most controversial one, which is Genshin. If you've heard anything about the voice acting there, we have a lot to talk about there. But Star Rail's had its share of detractors for the last few months. Some don't like the new area. Some don't like how little content the game is putting out. Some have a specific grudge against a very specific character. We'll get to that.
Yep.
And then even Zenless, which I would say is doing the best of the three, still has a couple other issues going on right now with some decisions that they've made. In some ways, they caved to what seemed like popular opinion at the time, and now a lot of those folks have realized, oh, whoops, maybe we shouldn't have did that. So we're going to talk about the issues with all three, but then also at the end, at least get back to some of the things that we still like. Jason and I are playing 2 of the 3 games currently, kind of.
Yeah, I stepped away from Genshin after the Inazuma event where they had like a mystery and one of the little raccoons called they got a name. Someone will yell at me. But they had their whole little thing with that. That was fun. I like that one. Missing a lot of voices. But that was basically the last I engaged with it up until like a day ago when I logged in to check some stuff, and now they're throwing rewards at me to come back. So
please come back.
Yeah, otherwise it's just been ZZZ for me, and I have like never enjoyed Hoyo games as much as that, maybe, other than when ZZZ was, I think, between patches and I had Chaska and I was flying around every single day. That was fun too. But
and, we've had different heights at different points.
Yeah.
Penacony was a big hit for both of us with Star Rail.
Yep.
Obviously, everything with Furina and really that whole region in general was solid in Genshin recently. I have not especially enjoyed Natlan. I know some people have, but it has been somewhat divisive. It's really bright and colorful, and it's fun to explore if you have some of the new characters that make traversing it more simple.
Yep.
But obviously, as somebody who hasn't pulled anybody since Arlecchino, I don't qualify for that. So I have my own reasons to be kind of biased against it. I'll admit it. However, the bigger issue going on with Genshin right now is sort of tied to this, and I'll just bring up the still of him talking because this was from this morning when we're recording this. This will be a couple days ago by the time this goes live, and who knows what else will come out between now and then at the pace this keeps happening.
Yeah.
But Joe Vieja, essentially, which is Riceley's voice actor, basically spelled out everything, and some of this information was already out there, but for me it was especially interesting because he's actively employed right now as a voice actor.
Yes.
And there's some clear frustration on his part about the misinformation that's out there, and he's spelling this all out very clearly for people. But let's give it like a little 30-second version. Basically, the SAG-AFTRA strike has been going on for a long time, and the question was how much Hoyo was affected by that. We know I put a thing in there. I actually should have pulled it up on the screen, but I put something in our group Discord about like just how many characters are currently unvoiced in the game. It's like 3/4 of them.
Yes.
So trying to go through story stuff in particular is even worse than normal because now instead of just blabbing on forever, now it's just text forever.
Correct.
There were other issues with this that are, it's not as simple as just, well, we want the voices back, of course, because some of the voice actors were claiming that they were trying to basically fight back against AI integrating into their business, taking people's voices and then using them for their own purposes, which sounds like a noble cause, but I've talked enough. Jason, like, sum this up in a way that I'm not doing right now.
The basic gist is, and I think it sums up best by just saying Genshin, its studios, the subsidiaries, parent companies, they're in China. They are not part of the SAG-AFTRA agreement. They never have been part of the SAG-AFTRA agreement. I don't even know if it's clear if they can be, given Chinese law and how American unions work and all of that kind of thing. But because of that simple fact, you should realize that it doesn't matter. There are voice acting companies with Hoyo that have agreed to like, hey, we're not going to do AI stuff. I believe there's even some Chinese law that doesn't even allow it. It's considered like you own your own voice, and it's not. It's like I think it's even illegal. I've read some places. Don't quote me on that. It wouldn't matter. The point of the matter is they have never agreed to the SAG-AFTRA thing. They are not part of. They are not a union approved like company. They a project. They're not a company approved project. The reality is those voice actors, because of what they call Global Rule 1, which is you're never supposed to join a project that isn't part of the union, they shouldn't even be a part of it.
Mhm.
So we've now entered an era, though, where my understanding is a lot of times voice actors and actors overall are just, they're encouraged. They're not allowed to join a project, but they are encouraged to try out for one. And if they are hired for it, they're then supposed to be like, hey, well, there'd be a lot of good reasons for you to join the union. You should do it. Clearly, you get people like me, very talented. So it's supposed to be a way to keep drawing more companies into the union. But if the company ever does that, what you end up with is a bunch of union workers working for non-union projects when they're not supposed to. And now we have a situation like this where the game was just some Chinese gotcha game. It got really big. And now when they were having like legitimate AI stuff, now they're sort of using it to be like, well, yeah, and we want Hoyo to be a part of the union. And that was never part of the deal. It has never been part of the deal. There are plenty of YouTubers and independent voice actors that work for these studios, some of them abroad, who would never be able to like join. Why would they join an American union if they live in Japan or whatever? Like,
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff now where English VAs, specifically the ones in the union, have now leveraged sort of the anti-AI thing to try to sort of strong arm Hoyo and even bully other voice actors. We'll probably touch on that here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, into like dragging it all in and sort of obfuscating what's happening here, which is Hoyo has just been firm. Hey, we're not a union thing. We hire independent voice actors. And if you don't want to work, I guess that's fine. You're allowed to not work, but at some point we may have to recast you. And guess what? They've been recast. Big surprise. But they have not been clear about that. And they've been drumming up, I can't believe I've been recast. I was never notified. There's a lot of that going on when they did know. They have known. Or at the very least, if they didn't know, they should have known. Because if you just don't show up to work for 6 months and you refuse to, at some point their contract's going to say, I'm sorry, we're allowed to rehire somebody else to replace you. And they have. So this dearth of voice actors, this lack of them, 3/4 of the cast, it's by choice. These are the voice actors' choices. Now, some of them may have legitimate choices. They want to support other voice acting. It's a noble cause. I'm pro-union overall. But this is effectively trying to strong arm other companies, a foreign company, effectively, into like sort of a monopoly that the SAG-AFTRA wants on all possible projects, even though by their own rules, their actors shouldn't even be involved in this project. So it's frankly scummy. That's what I'm just going to say. I agree or disagree, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And as more people have kind of come out of the woodworks, like Risley's voice actor here, to clarify or sort of be like, no, I've looked at the SAG-AFTRA agreements. It's not how it is. We're reaching a boiling point where the players, the communities, are really starting to turn on the English VAs.
Yep.
And some of them are crashing out hard. The VAs. The Paimon, that's, I think, the biggest one here. The Paimon VA has gotten, I don't know how to say, I don't know if I've ever seen a crash out. I don't know that you should be running around calling other, like, what are these, fucking YouTubers know about? Like, they had to take down the video. It's the internet. It's still around. Like, It's a lot of bad. It's bad. It is not a good look. And now other communities, like the Chinese community, are looking at the English VAs and going, why are you guys even tolerating this? You should just get rid of them all. And like, it feels like it's actually now harming all English VAs. They're all kind of getting a bad rap for it. You now have people that have been coming in. I guess this new Kenichi voice actor lives in Japan, was basically Kenichi was recast because that actor didn't want to work. So they got a new guy. And then that new guy got bullied by other voice actors, like calling him a scab, calling him keep in mind, again, never a part of the union. There's no strike because, again, you can't strike something that's not a part of the union agreement. Not how that works. You can't just declare a strike on everything. Like they had to have agreed to it to have broken the deal. And then they're accusing those people of basically being rats or scabs. Not a thing. Not a thing at all.
You can't be a scab if there's no open wound.
Correct. Yeah. It's so we are reaching a point where I don't know what the hell they're going to do with these VAs. Like, it sucks to some degree. I'm really glad that ZZZ has been mostly untouched by this. It kind of sucks that they've recast some characters. I liked Soldier 11 and Lycon's original actors, but I'm going to be honest, if the VAs don't want to work, I would rather have a character with a voice than with than a character unvoiced by somebody I like. I'm sorry, like I don't know what option I have here. I can't support you if you don't work, and it's not even for a strike.
The main problem I'm running into right now is that I'm selfish to a certain extent. Obviously, I'm willing to see the bigger picture, but just as a selfish gamer, I have stopped playing Genshin for multiple reasons, but I also have not done any story in Star Rail, and that's the game I still like the most, because I just find it to be untenable when half the characters aren't voiced.
Yeah.
This even happens in games that are fully voiced. For example, we're going through Trails Through Daybreak on the channel right now, and it's a smaller studio that runs the Trails games. So there are certain scenes where it's like, sometimes a character's voiced, sometimes they aren't. In the same scene, sometimes a character doesn't talk at all. Sometimes one character's voiced for all of it and another character isn't. I find all that to be extremely distracting.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are other reasons behind that here, so it's why you don't want to be too selfish and just talk about, well, it sucks for me as a player because my favorite characters aren't voiced or they had different voices. However, the tipping point for me was when the VAs went on the attack.
Yeah.
To me, that was the difference between me being unsympathetic and me just being kind of like, well, then what's the point of all of this? Because, as you mentioned, giving somebody to have death threats because they've taken a role that was not even a scab in the first place,
Yeah.
with
Right.
Kenich's new voice actor, to me is deplorable. And it's especially ironic that Paimon's voice actor, they have not stopped working this whole time.
Of course. And you might say, well, are they a scab? Well, no, they're not a scab because there's no strike. So, of course, they're allowed to continue working, which is the wild part about this. Like, there's all these loopholes that some of these voice actors are using to keep working because they know what's happening, but they are choosing to obfuscate what's happening to garner a public opinion, essentially. They're just trying to farm public opinion for their cause. Again, I'm pro-union generally. I don't work for one currently, but there's a difference between wanting to have collective bargaining and a monopoly to the point that you are going to coerce and strong-arm other people to attain it. One of them is, I just will say, like, we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, but there's a reason that you may want to pay interns. Like, when we talk about political movements here, one of the reasons that you want to not have unpaid interns and pay your interns is because it can discriminate against people who may not have the money in order to be an intern. So you end up discriminating against lower class people, and then only people of a certain financial status could be able to be an intern. That's sort of what happens if the only VAs that can work are the ones that can pay the union dues, and that's the only jobs that are in town. Independent VAs, YouTubers that want to get into the scene, if I want to do it someday, if I'm forced to either pay the dues or not work, that is a barrier of entry that discriminates against people. That's not good. I am against that. I am pro-union, but I'm against that kind of systemic discrimination. And we're reaching a point where it's really hard to be on the right side of these union workers because they're not being reasonable in this discussion at all. Like, there's no room. They're not willing to let these new voice actors come in and say, hey, it sucks we lost the role. We understand it's not a union project, but we're really good voice actors. You should speak on our behalf. They're not doing that. They're obfuscating, they're lying about it, and they're trying to trick people into hating Hoyo for something they didn't do. The SAG-AFTRA people are literally tagging Hoyo's game companies on Twitter, X, whatever, to basically be like, yeah, if you ever want to talk, we could get an agreement going. Like, they're trying to look like they're the ones in the right when they're just the mafia guys in the background being like, I don't know, who's going to protect your shop? It's not cool. I don't like it.
So the biggest issue I have is that I'm also anti-AI in some applications as well. There are beneficial applications for AI. But as a journalist and someone in the newspaper industry, I have plenty of reasons to have, wariness about AI going forward, about how it's used. Will it replace writers? Will it try and aggregate articles that we've done, etc.? So similarly, it's really hard to take a bootlicker stance on this because in general, it's like, oh, everybody's going to bat for the big corporation, you know?
Yeah.
How dare you? You're not supporting the little man in the fight because the corporation's making money hand over fist, especially in the case of Hoyo because
Yep.
gacha games are, you know,
Yep.
lucrative. However, it must be startling to the voice actors who have been really staunchly opposed to all this, and then also some of the ones making threats, to see how quickly public sentiment has twisted against them. Because
Yeah.
it really should be easy to get an undercurrent of, well, we're fighting for the little person, the marginalized person. We want to make their lives better. Well, no, if you go about it this way, and you're assholes about it, and you may not even be right in the first place, now all of a sudden we're having a whole other discussion. And the fact that it's roped in folks like Little Karibo, who, I mean, obviously is a voice actor of a sort because of his work with Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, but like, it's not even just Hoyo people now. It's bringing in people from across the industry who are sort of taking sides on it. So it's amazing that this was like the fulcrum for everything that's gone wrong since. And at the end of the day, again, as much as I hate to make this a small thing, most people are going to look at this and just go, I just want characters to be voiced.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yep.
Mhm.
Especially if it turns out they're not even anti-union or the strike doesn't even have a relevancy. I just want the characters in my game to be voiced. So like maybe it is time to move on because to be frank, Hoyo's been pretty patient with this.
Absolutely.
It's been almost 9 months since some of the first unvoiced lines started showing up in any of the 3 games. That's a long time to wait to recast anybody.
My understanding is the studios involved, again, and even I think because of some Chinese law, they have agreed to all of the precautions against AI. They
Correct.
won't do it. So you lose me on that because like don't do AI. AI is just aggregating actual creatives. It's atrocious for that. But like that's not what's happening here. That's not the battle that we're fighting. And it's really scummy to not just be honest about that. I don't like it. And every single winning argument is not what's actually being fought here. And I hate it. We don't get a game that's voiced because these developers, the voice actors that want to work, their game is being harmed. There are people who are showing up to work, putting in actual decent work. They want to be a voice actor. They want the game they work for to succeed. Even like, so we'll remove Hoyo. You're an independent voice actor. You're going into Hoyo and you're like, I want to do my best. Well, unfortunately, that scene where you're pouring your heart out and you're crying and doing whatever is against some guy who's just stone-faced staring there with a bunch of text rolling under it.
Mhm.
And it's awful. It makes everybody's work look worse across the board. So they're only harming a lot of the creative work of other creatives. It's wild to me because they don't have the truth behind them on this. It's not cool. I don't know how to tell you this. If you're a VA and you see this little channel, stop doing it. Like, be honest, be forthcoming about what you guys want, and just work. The best thing that you can do, your strongest argument, the reason that you even go to these non-union companies and break the rules is because you want your talent, the union's talent, to stand out. I'm going to be honest with you, it doesn't when you don't work. You don't do anything, no one hears you, no one cares, and they're going to go to all the independent people, they're going to see them doing well, and they're going to go, why do we need you? And you're going to lose your bargaining power here.
This is not 2008.
Yeah.
The landscape has changed significantly. We don't hear Troy Baker and Laura Bailey and a handful of other really well-known voice actors and actresses in the same roles over and over again. For the better. I mean, it became almost a joke, like, oh, there's Liam O'Brien's voice again. And look, I love those guys, especially, like, there's nothing wrong with any of them. They did excellent work. But now, especially because people can have their own in-home studios, the level of recording equipment has ramped up significantly. You can do it remote in almost every scenario.
Yep.
Now there's a lot of talented young voice actors and actresses who have gotten their start doing, like you said, dubbing on YouTube or other smaller projects that have forced their way into the conversation. So it's no longer a case of like, well, you know, I don't even want to name a specific voice actor. It's going to imply that they're in favor of this. But just in general, like, pick whatever star.
Yeah.
It's no longer as simple as like, well, I'm like the only act in town. You are not anymore.
Yeah.
And again, I had no problem with almost any of this, even if it was slightly misrepresenting anything, until it's even disingenuous to say like some of the Genshin voice actors. It's like 5.
It is like 5
of the 90 plus that are significant characters.
Right,
but those 5 went on the warpath. And to me, like, especially Paimon and Kuching's voice actresses, and it was way too much, especially to be wrong.
Yes.
It would already be too much of an offensive if it was just aggressive. But to be that aggressively wrong, to me, is like all sorts of alarm bells.
And it
Mhm.
makes all of them look bad, which is not good because there are so many voice actors, I'm sure, that just want to show support for the general cause. Because again, there's no actual strike here. They're just choosing not to do it to show solidarity, which is a great thing to do. But if the only vocal people that you're showing solidarity with are toxic assholes, you all sort of look like toxic assholes, which means now you're going to have people like the Risley voice actor here. I don't remember his name, but like he now has to look like the reasonable guy and start clearing things up. I suspect he's doing this in response to these other VAs being just so atrocious.
Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And look, some of them have talked about like, well, if you're not a voice actor, you can't understand how hard it is and this and that. It's like, miss me with that nonsense. I don't need to be a baker to know how bread is made.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. Now, some people clearly don't understand all the work that goes into voice acting. I'm not saying there's nothing to that argument, but the idea that you can't even approach the subject if you're not a voice actor or actress yourself is ludicrous.
Well, just to be clear, the Paimon VA literally went off. Why do you give these fucking YouTubers don't know what it means to be a VA? To be clear, some of YouTubers I like Marco Meatball. If you ever check him out, does great music reviews.
Yep.
He's voiced characters in Genshin. He got into Genshin because he was such a big Genshin content creator because of all the music stuff he did, and then he voices the music guy when they do the music events in Genshin. That's not a coincidence, and it was really great to hear. Like he shows up in the game, he speaks, and I'm like, I know that guy from YouTube. He's the music guy. He's the music guy in the game now. I don't know what his stance is on this. I haven't really kept up with him. I don't know if he's pro, against, if he's keeping quiet or not. I don't even know if he's SAG-AFTRA. It doesn't matter. The point is, he's a YouTuber and a VA. That line is not as distant as you think it is anymore.
Yep.
So it's just they speak like they're on a high horse, and that horse is real small. It's a little stool right now. Like it's I don't know. Come to earth, okay? Come back down. Because I don't know.
I'm in a tough spot because that's the main reason. Again, like some of my frustration with Genshin stems back to Dia, which was well chronicled on this channel. But like that's the main reason now that I don't want to. I can't stand all the text in the first place, and all three Hoyo games are guilty of this at times. But Genshin's the worst of the three. Without voices, it's like absolutely not. There's no way I'm going through the main story right now because I will not get any enjoyment out of it. And if I'm not enjoying the main story, what am I even doing?
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas Doug, I was curious because you kind of fell off, around Christmas time as well for a couple months there before you came back to pull for a couple things when Shenhe finally became available. So what were your reasons for falling off? Because Jason and I have been pretty vocal about ours, but I'm wondering what yours was for kind of just taking a break.
Largely it was the events because I like doing the events. I like exploring. The story, it's great. But it's not what immediately drives me is these events that you've made friends with these characters along the way through the story, whatever. So I want to go see all these virtual friends. Go and hang out, do fucking poetry or whatever the fuck.
Right.
And then you get the most annoying person ever, the Paimon voice, next to text. And it's immediately it's like I'm not here for Paimon. I don't want to hear Paimon. Paimon is so annoying to me. I want to hear all my other favorite characters just sitting here being like, hey, this is a cool event, and oh yeah, this is what my thoughts are, or whatever. And instead, I'm just like,
yeah, you're saying that if you had had the option prior to all this to mute just my Paimon, you would have and left everybody else voiced.
Yes.
But instead, you're now left with the reverse of that, and it's
Right.
exactly, yeah.
Which is
No,
tough, right? Because I
yeah.
was already sort of I'm not alone in being annoyed with Paimon. Plenty of people were annoyed with Paimon. Paimon was actually somewhat better than she was in the early days. They had done some work to make her less annoying, more relatable. There had been improvements, but still, it's because the protagonist, whoever you choose, is unvoiced. It was like they had to be the stand-in, and it was like the most annoying voice imaginable for that.
Yes.
Because Pom Pom's also kind of annoying, but guess what? He's barely in the game.
Yeah.
So I don't have to deal with that on a constant basis because Paimon's always going to be there, especially when it's the main story.
Yep.
So I get that. It was never so much of a deterrent, but now that Paimon is annoying in-game and their voice actor is annoying out of the game, it's like a tipping point for me there too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough because like I know that you should always try to separate the artist from like their work. There's a lot of it can get really complicated sometimes. At the end of the day, you should try to. There's a lot of people that go into making Genshin, right? It's not just one VA, and their own personal opinions outside the game should really not tinge everything else. But man, when you hear that voice actor just calling YouTubers like rats and scum, and it's in a voice that is almost identical to Paimon, you're like, oh no, like it's a hard mental image to remove.
I'm just imagining some YouTuber that she just threw under the bus and insulted, just taking a video of Paimon just floating there and her voice saying all this shit.
Well,
And they've talked about like, well, they're disabled
Mm-hmm.
and they've got a lot of medical bills, so they can't afford to sit out like other people can.
Sure.
It's like, then why are the two of you going after somebody else for picking up work? You have no
Yes.
idea what their circumstances are.
This is a
Correct.
battle that you inserted yourself into.
correct.
And,
Yeah. No, exactly. Like they think I don't know. I don't know what kind of mindset puts a person into that other than it obviously has to be rather self-centered to not be able to imagine that there could be other life circumstances that other people are facing that would require them to work the same as them. I don't know why the Paimon VA is the way that she is. Honestly, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I don't know. Paimon has been better in the game. You can tell that the people behind Genshin recognize this. The character of Paimon has been so much more emotive and emotional, especially in Natlan. You guys, I really haven't done Natlan like I have. There's some genuinely touching Paimon moments where you like are face to face with the atrocities of war, and Paimon is really struggling with it, and it comes through in the performance. It's the best Paimon's ever been. And then you boot up Twitter, and she's calling a bunch of people like fucktards or whatever, and you're like, well, fuck, okay, Yeah.
So that's just Genshin. And again,
Yes.
we'll talk about some of the things I still like with Genshin, and we get to the end here. We'll wrap up by being somewhat positive. But this was about the issues of the three games they're facing. So primarily, we're going to go there. We got to talk about Star Rail. And Jason, I'm going to give you the floor first to talk about this asshole, but then we'll talk about Amorpha and just things in general right now, the lack of content, etc.
I've touched on this in one of the poll videos where I did a brief rant. It was like right when I first did the zone. I basically, and I'll be honest, I think I finished 1.0 of Amphoria. May not even be true. I basically did like one of the big bosses and was like, I think that's the end of the zone. Whatever, I'm out. Because every goddamn puzzle, with the sole exception of where you have to move so many spaces and the other thing moves behind you, that's the most complicated puzzle in this entire goddamn planet. Because every other one is look at an object, hold down spacebar to rebuild it and open a door effectively. I mean, sure, that door is like rebuilding a bridge or moving a pillar. It's the same thing. Walk to a space, hold down the spacebar if you play on keyboard. Or it's walk to an area, touch a thing, and now like a zone follows you around. Every single thing is the most basic bitch thing you could ever imagine for a puzzle. This is not like, oh, how do I want to rearrange the things like in Penacony where you've got like a real big high force perspective with the owls. It's not the complicated mirror puzzles where they really played with like how does perspective and like your perception and the dreamlike quality. None of that is in this. It's hold spacebar, just move from, I got to touch this thing to hold spacebar. Oh, what do you know? It opened the path over here. So I run over there to touch spacebar so that I can go back to the other area to cross it to touch the spacebar over here to go back to the other one to hit spacebar. And God forbid you touch the wrong chest to loot it, because then this motherfucker right here is going to steal it. You got to watch him. Run through a portal, and then you've got to sit there and hold spacebar, let go of spacebar, hold spacebar, let go of spacebar, hold spacebar, let go of spacebar, and then he's going to talk to you. Was it annoying listening to me do it? That's going to be in every region of the zone, because he's going to be in there at least once, stealing a chest that you just had to do a spacebar puzzle to clear a way to get to. Fuck that. I don't know who did that, but this is terrible game design.
Star Rail really is like the most visual novel of their games, isn't it? Is because there's the battles play themselves.
Yes, they do.
And then you're not doing puzzles. There's no gameplay variance or anything like that.
Nothing. I have never been so bored in an area. And like, look, Penacony, plot-wise, there's certainly a lot of little like mysteries and other things that get lost in the mix in there. It's not a perfect area. But I did not feel like my time was being violated playing those zones like I do playing Amphoria here.
Mhm.
I have never walked around and felt like a game designer was just wasting my time to draw out the playtime. I don't understand. I don't even know why I have to hold spacebar for every one of these goddamn puzzles. At least let me just click it and it's done or something. Like in every single opportunity, it is a waste of your time. It is just there to extend the amount of time that you're playing. And that's effectively what all that text is that they do. The unvoiced text that you have to sit through now is just, oh, keep pressing button. Have 20 minutes gone away? I guess you got your game time in. It feels just aggressively terrible to a degree.
Of two things happened here. Either this was a conscious decision because they knew they were going to be thin on content at the start of this year, or it was not a conscious decision and it's just a stupid accident. But in either case, again, this is coming from the guy who likes Star Rail the most of the three, there is not enough content in this game. And so it feels like these additions now have been made to stretch out the time that you would otherwise be spending doing, I don't know, anything. Because as Doug alluded to, this is the game that should have the most content of anything because you just throw in some other combat stuff.
Yep.
And the combat's fun. And while you can auto through some of the daily stuff on a regular basis, and that's kind of nice in some cases, when you fight against tougher enemies or you do these weird combo events they've done or whatever, you usually want to take control and work your way through them and kind of like they're almost like puzzles via combat, right?
Correct.
Like,
yes.
How do we break a certain enemy or satisfy a certain condition? Well, they haven't really done almost any combat events in the last 9 months. So they're not taking advantage of the game's biggest strength, and instead it's showing off more of this, which is almost its greatest weakness. Exploring the world in Star Rail is not nearly as fun as it is in Genshin. It just isn't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make that process worse, then I don't really understand what you're doing.
No, it to me it just feels, I don't know, aggressive towards the players. Like they just actually do not care about your time because, to your point earlier, if it's a mistake, then they literally don't understand the damage they're doing to your time, and that's a huge red flag for any other piece of content they're making. Or they did this by choice, and that means it was malicious. It's just malicious game design, frankly. I don't know how to describe it. It's either accidental or purposeful maliciousness. Either way, I don't support it. I've stepped away from HSR. I'm going to have to wait until they fix some more stuff, or frankly, until this, I guess, a year, because this is going to be a year of this planet. They've said, oh, the main story, it's going to be a whole year. You have a whole year to look forward to it. I'm not looking forward to any of this. If the story was short and quick and I could get through it without having to hold spacebar for like 2 hours, I can't play this quickly. I can hop into ZZZ and they'll be like, hey, man, you're about to go on a like immersive story mission. It might take some time. Are you prepared? And I can be like, okay, I'm going to set aside some time. I'm going to do it. And they'll break that into 3 parts of immersive storytelling. So you can do what you got to do. And otherwise, even then, it's still when I spend maybe 3 hours and I just did like a whole character thing or a whole main chapter. If I wanted to spend 3 hours, I might get through like a third or a quarter of like patch 1 in this. It's so much of my time. I think I was just trying to burn through it as quickly as I could, and I couldn't. Every single aspect of it was burning my time, and I hated it. I grew to hate HSR going through this zone. And I like HSR. I have in the past. But I don't know if we want to move on to the rest of the stuff. But now, because I want to step away, power creep, that's a whole other thing that's happening in HSR. It is becoming so increasingly difficult to finish content with characters that I have that my only alternative is to throw money at the game to get the newest characters as soon as possible, every single patch, or I've got to grind this game to get every single, they're not polychromes, but whatever they're called in this game, or Stellar Jade, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get as many as I can to try to pull every character as I can to hope I'm lucky. And that grinding process, because of this malicious game design, is more painful than it has ever been, because I cannot just go through quests unless I am just going to literally skip everything, not read anything, burn through everything, which at that point, why are you making it? Developers, what are you doing? You want me to engage and read your content. Don't make it painful mentally to get through it. I don't understand. I don't want to touch your game at this point, and that's wild to me.
The irony of this is that, as both of you are aware, but especially Doug, this is sort of reminiscent of the main design problems that Final Fantasy XIV runs into sometimes.
Yeah.
That they've also tried to get better about in certain aspects over the years, but it's like, okay, I'm the Warrior of Light. It's been 10 years. I just saved the entire world / all the world / everything. And now you're like, could you get some turnips for me? And I'm like, no, motherfucker. I'm not getting you turnips. I'm the warrior of light, okay? Delegate that to somebody else who gives a fuck. You know, in the very beginning, I guess you could argue it's charming, and it's sort of like scaled down to the experience that you are at that point. You're a burgeoning adventurer. You don't know what the hell you're doing.
Right.
But at this point, I'm experienced. So in the same case with the Trailblazer, it's like, what? Just hit this thing with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Just hit it in the head with a baseball bat if it's going to keep taking your fucking treasure. Because you're a Stellaron.
Yeah.
You have stopped multiple issues on multiple different planets to this point. It's like, stop getting jerked around by a purple floating GameCube color looking motherfucker.
Yeah, the Aeons have like gazed upon you thrice now, 4 times. I don't know how many of them have looked upon us and like found us worthy at this point. And it's like, I've lost track. And it's like, we're working with the Herda, one of the what are they called? I don't even remember what they're called. It's what Acheron is. Either the people that embody these things. Like, we're walking amongst gods. Like, we can call them up. Hey, Acheron, yeah, I know that you're like an embodiment of the nihility, but like, could you just pose for a silly photo at this amusement park with me? And she's like, sure, man. Like, what the hell am I doing in Amphoria? And they built the whole plot so like you're cut off, and it's like, oh no, what's happening? You're like here by yourself. And it's like, I mean, I guess, but like, am I less powerful? Can I not be like, yeah, so I just saved like a planet, in fact 2, maybe 3. Like, I killed like one of the generals of the army of destruction. I think I can handle some of this. And they're like, oh, no, you seem pretty trustworthy, I guess. It's like, and they've talked about this. Amphoria is supposed to be the hero's journey. The problem with that, the hero's journey usually involves coming from nothing. Sort of, you kind of start at home and you sort of work your way into, I'm not going to go through the stages of the hero's journey, but you kind of eventually make your way back to home. But the point is, you sort of have that low point, that simple starting. You're Luke Skywalker on Tatooine looking at the sunset, wondering why you're just a moisture farmer. You want to do more. We can't be that because, like, I just killed a god in a dreamscape, like, I don't know, 2 hours ago in Penacony. And we arrive here and they're like, oh, you're nobody. And it's like, am I though? I don't know.
I wasn't just shooting wombats in my B-18,
your
whatever
your
it is.
T-17 back
Yes,
home. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
Like, no, I was fighting a god. Like,
Yeah.
I was fighting the concept of despair, and now I'm getting my ass kicked by this brother of this other character.
Yeah, one of the like dead gods is trying to come back, and I beat them back into oblivion. And then it's like, I don't know, but you seen this trickster guy? He can steal your chest. I hope you can worship your prayer of time to get it back. And it's like, fuck you, man. What is happening? Like, I don't know. This is almost an argument for like they should just come up with a different main character and let you like swap over. I'm not gonna fix their problems. Honestly, developers, fix your own shit. Okay,
Yeah, they have enough money. They have enough money to fix it. Now, Zenless is not free from criticism either. Again, it has its shit together the most of the 3 right now, and I don't think it's especially close. But this is a case where they did try to fix something and may have made it worse by doing so. On the screen, we're on the videos. This isn't like a podcast version of this, but maybe you have it in the background while you're listening or whatever. But we have TV mode in the background. And, back in 2.4, it was like, or 1.4?
1.4. Yeah.
It was like, well, we're going to get rid of that because we just don't feel like it's engaging enough, and people have complained about this, and it takes too long, and it's slow, and it's confusing, and blah, blah, blah. And the replacement for that ended up being, well, now we're going to have to reuse a lot of the assets and have you run through some very samey-looking corridors, and you get to run around as, like, Eus now, but, like, that also opens up its own questions because if you're just running around with folks, like, what's the whole point of our 2 main characters in this game anyways? Well, it turns out they might be able to go Super Saiyan. We'll get to that later. But the point is, like, the main thing they were able to do is kind of help coordinate and help guide people through these situations, and you got to experience that as a player by working through TV mode.
Yep.
But because the people who play gacha games had the reading comprehension of a fucking 3-year-old, that was too much to ask. Now, was TV mode perfect? No. And there were plenty of times where things did take a little bit too long, or were too explained or hand-holdy. So I'm not saying there weren't ways to fix it. Unfortunately, we listened to the least common denominator, we obliterated the entire thing, and now people are starting to pine for it again. And it's like, no. Some people were fighting for it back then, so that's fine.
Yep.
But if you were one of the people that were advocating to get rid of it, and now in the span of 3 months, you're like, I kind of miss TV mode. Again, miss me with that shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was in favor of TV mode. I saw the possibility of it. Now, I think they have this event called Arpeggio Faults. It's one of the permanent events, and it's like TV mode on crack, where you just end up picking up all these buffs and statting yourself out, and you kind of grab different agents in it, and it ends up kind of just devolving into you just bumping into everything that you can to just kill everything because you're so like overstatted. It's maybe like the worst possible implementation of what like was the most possible at the time, but like there are events in the game. There was like one that was almost like a Pokemon event where you were like battling with it.
Mhm.
There are some of the character events or main missions that had the TV mode, and they really showed the possibility of making sort of interactive, like kind of what would you call it, like a two-dimensional dungeon for you to navigate. Like the enemies move in certain patrols, or they move every step that you move. So like you're always trying to like plan out your steps. It felt very retro, very video gamey, and frankly, there was a lot of potential. It was it took too long for text to go by. It could often just be like a lot of, this is how a lock works. I need a blah, blah, blah. This is the room 777. Are you at, like, over and over and over and over? That was bad. It was really bad. But now that they've removed it, yeah, I don't know. Now we're entering an era where we've just cut out one of the most beautiful ways that ZZZ handled storytelling was by using different mediums.
Mhm.
Now, they would use their visual novel, they would use their comics, they'd use cutscenes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it was just still images, and they had the TV mode for when they wanted to be like, oh, you show up in an area and there's like conveyor belts or an explosion or a military bunker, and you've got to navigate to it by avoiding these turrets or whatever. You could do that in TV mode, make the players feel like they were participating in it. Now their alternative to that is they either have to pay artists to do art of it, they have to try to cobble together some sort of interactive mission, which is turning out to be clearly too expensive because they're not doing it, or they just throw text at the screen. And unfortunately, it usually ends up being text at the screen to describe what's happening.
Cheapest way.
So we've now entered an era where before all they had to do was come up with a couple of little assets to throw on a TV screen to tell a whole story. That's gone now. They've killed one of the mediums for them to tell a story. And that's frankly the greatest loss I feel of it. If I would even have accepted a middle ground where like maybe either just character stories or just the main story had the TV mode, and so like you sort of knew which one you were getting at any given time. I was open to a lot of different things. People that are just like, I don't know, it was kind of nice, I miss it. Yeah, I'm with Chris. If you wanted it gone, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, you need to just shut the fuck up and just start learn to like voice your concerns about stuff, but stop trying to just destroy things. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you could have given them feedback to how to change it, and they made some attempts to, but they just got so much negative feedback they took it out, and it might end up hurting the game in the long run. I think I trust these guys enough to say that it probably won't, but who knows? As Chris has alluded to, the main characters have started to become, and it's unclear if this is planned or not, but originally they would get often very sick in the hollows very early, and that was why you needed EOS to run in there, your Bangbu, to do the TV mode, because you weren't doing it. Well, now it's changed so that, oh, you've sort of unlocked certain potentials that were limiting you before, and now you can go in the hollow yourself. So now they have you run around in certain story missions. Now, that could have been a thing they wanted to do in the story from the get-go. It's certainly very anime for you to sort of unlock your potential. So I get it. I can't tell you that wasn't always the plan, but it also could have just been that they needed to find a way to get the character involved more, because they can't just have you running around as a Bangbu to do cutscenes all the time. So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's I don't know that it's a change for the better having removed TV mode.
By the way,
it was a way for them to show, not tell.
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
and do a little bit of both, really.
Yeah.
But at least that was at least somewhat interactive, as Jason said. What is Fairy's purpose in the game now?
So they've struggled to articulate that in the main story ever since. Her role has really been downsized, and in fact, there are certain parts of the main mission where, for some reason, she is no longer there. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the story, but like she gets sort of taken out of the picture at times, And it is hard to tell if this was always the plan or if this is because she's part of the interactive experience of doing the TV mode. Every time you touch something, she was the one saying, hey, this is what's here. Hey, that's what's here. Unclear what the reason is.
And I've heard people argue that, because, we have a lot of very interesting characters in ZZZ. It's its biggest strength. Like, every character feels different, plays different. They each have their own unique models. It's not just one size fits all like certain other games, like the other two, really.
Yeah.
So there's other things that they need to be putting resources into. And I'm like, you're arguing against yourself and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
If that is true, and I think there's some credence to it, then why not keep something like this that was easier to manipulate? Again, could it have been changed, improved? 100%. But now you're basically putting all the work on the 3D renderers to be like, all right, we either have to start making new areas and corridors so that they don't all stick out the same because you see the same 6.
Yep.
Or like now you're asking for more by getting rid of something that they already had instead of just improving it.
Yeah, all they had to do was
it's
put one
frustrating
sprite
just
in,
because like, on the one hand, I want to be like, cool, ZZZ listened in a way that I don't think Genshin in particular has done a very good job of over the last 4 years, because people are still like, please put new 4 stars in the shop. And they're like, we don't fucking know what you said. So I want to be like, cool, like they listened to their people, but I was like, maybe this was a time you shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there are certain things where, because I don't even know if I can, replayed the early parts of the game after they've removed the TV mode. So I actually don't know what the new player experience is without it.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So it's really hard for me to gauge whether the story feels better or worse now. I don't know. I'd almost have to watch YouTubers play it or whatever, and even then it wouldn't feel quite the same. I can't go back in time. But there are arguments that if they've like done really big like Fall Guy modes with the Bang Boo, I could see versions of the map, or like the Bang Boo Fall Guys thing was sort of flavored as like a digital space that like a representation of you navigating certain things and you had to do it. I could see them repurposing that into like I'm trying to think of like if anyone's ever played games that often do like Cyberpunk, not actual Cyberpunk 2077, but there are some where like when you're a net runner, they just put you on a different map, and like there'll be like daemons running around that are like, or viruses, and you've got to like kill them or avoid them, and you've got to touch this node to unlock this door. That's a very kind of Cyberpunk thing that I think they could try to duplicate with the Bang Boo navigating a digital space. Oh, you've actually get to that platform because that will open this gate for the character in the mission. The problem is they've lost the ability to translate that you do that and then you get to see the gate open on the other side. The TV mode let you do that. They could just drop you into a floor, you did a puzzle, then they moved you up, and then you saw a gate open and the character moved through it. That was the perfect way to do that. They could try to duplicate it now with the 3D models, but unfortunately the assets aren't there yet, so we're not getting any of that content right now. Will it exist in the future? I don't know. I thought they were going to push for it with all their Bang Boo Fall Guys stuff, but they haven't moved that into the main story or any of the character missions yet. So maybe they haven't committed. Maybe they've chosen to go a different direction. I don't know. I could see that being more interesting and at least a good alternative kind of for TV mode, but we're not there. And right now it just sort of feels like we're missing some of the storytelling that we had, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But to Chris's point earlier, it's hard to blame Hoyo for listening to their audience. Like, this is something that we kind of brought on ourselves. Not us personally. I was in favor of it, but it's hard to blame Hoyo and be like, you did what we wanted. Like, you shouldn't have. But
as a live service, these are the people that are actively giving you money every month, every poll or whatever. So that these are the people you have to listen to. These are your game directors, is all of your people playing your game.
Yeah. Sometimes the people on your Patreon or Kickstarter feed you bad ideas, but they're also the only ones paying your rent. So What do you do?
And it is frustrating because, like I said, there have been plenty of other times it's like, why didn't you listen? And yes, Hoyo is not some amorphous entity. There are different teams spearheading each of these 3 games and different feedbacks and all that. I understand. But it's like, man, the one time we would have maybe liked you not to listen as much and maybe listen to the other 10 or 11 things. And not the people bitching about more free stuff, but the quality of life upgrades that the other 2 games, especially Genshin, have struggled with for a long time, because these new games have put in stuff. And then Genshin feels like the dinosaur. It's like, listen to those more. If you're going to listen to this, then you can listen. So tell that team to listen to this stuff. It's not how it works, but it should be, maybe. But I don't want to be negative for the whole time.
Yep.
It's been about 45 minutes of that. It's not even negative per se, just pointing out kind of what's going wrong here. So I do want to talk about what's going well in all three games. We might as well do them in the same order. So like Genshin, I know I've said at the start that I didn't really like Natlan. Some people have. And
I will say I am one of the ones that have. I can express why. I'll try to be brief. I did get a lot of the exploration characters, to Chris's point earlier, so it is a little biased on that. You guys have seen the polls if you watch the videos. But I found the trick to Natlan. Initially, I was like, what the fuck is the point of this place? It kind of feels really disconnected because there's all the tribes. They don't have a collective sort of plot thread. I learned by doing the different. It's the only zone. Well, I guess I'm not sure. I had the Fontaine glider, but that just because I grinded it to look good on Farina. I have the Natlan glider now, earliest I've ever had in any region. I have an area in it, 100% explored. That has never happened before, and that is because if you do the individual tribe quests, each one is like a micro region, and they all kind of connect. They're also a character quest, so they've sort of intertwined the tribe and the themes of that tribe with the character from that tribe. That's Chaska, Jalona, and Mulani, whomever. So it's both a character quest and a tribe quest, which is sort of the nation quest, and it gives each area a flavor that is tied to a character that you may have or may not have, but you may like. So it's almost a more personal region, and I found that was actually really fun. I actually enjoyed that a lot more because it's sort of, I could go to an area in the region instead of being like, what random bullshit is happening in this corner of Fontaine that has nothing to do with the main story that I don't give a fuck about because I care about Farina, but she ain't here right now. Right now, it's some dragon in a well somewhere or whatever. Instead of it being that, I show up in an area and I'm like, what's going on over here? And Mulani shows up and she's like, hey, let's go do something. And then we get sucked into an adventure, and then we're doing all kinds of stuff, and we have a big emotional showdown that's like core to who Mulani is, of what her virtues and values are as an explorer and a guide, or Chaska and like what does it mean to be a protector of her people, what are the lengths they're going to go in as far as like progress or protecting Natlan. Every one of them is sort of a microcosm of the struggles of the tribe and the nation of the whole and the characters of that region, and I've actually really enjoyed the little snippets of it as a whole. That said, it is vastly different than every other region, and it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And like when I did the one in, Kenichi's one, I don't really care for Kenichi's much. So his was the most boring one. But I like Jalonin, I like Mualani, I like Chaska, I like Seatlali. So if you like those characters, I found myself a lot more invested. In that way, I think Natlan's been a really good change of pace. If you don't like the character designs or that they look super modern or any of that, yeah, I get it. And yeah, then I guess you're not going to like the region. But I do think there are pros to how they handle the storytelling in Natlan that are, I actually think, sort of good steps forward for Genshin. I'd like to see them do a bit more of it. But there are some downsides. And in fact, I'd say the main story in Natlan is probably the weakest main story that they've had. It's almost like that's the Archon's main story, and I'll be honest, I don't care a whole lot for the Archon, so you're just sort of along for the ride, and the best parts of it are when you get to hang out with those characters from those tribes that you've grown to like because you did the other missions. So it's a really weird bag in Natlan.
I kind of wonder, so I was the biggest fan of Fontaine. I haven't finished Natlan's story, so I don't want to pass judgment on it too much yet. What I've done so far, I've been kind of meh towards. I haven't hated, haven't loved. And then I think back to Fontaine, and I'm like, okay, so how much of that was actually Fontaine, and how much of that was the characters? Farina is the obvious example, but also Navia has a lot of really strong character beats in there.
Absolutely.
You can argue, okay, well, the underground jail stuff, or underwater jail stuff, was pretty interesting overall, as you kind of figured out what was going on. You're supposed to be stuck there as you get arrested. But is that the jail, or is that you get the twins, and you get Risley, and you get some other fun interactions there? So it's like, okay. And in general, I think more of my favorite character stories are what drives me forward, and more so than an overarching plot. A lot of JRPGs in particular fit that box as well. I'm just here for the journey with these guys I like. I don't really care about no, the world's gonna die. The earth, the tree of mana will wither and die. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I just like these people that are with me, my squad. So I'm like,
yeah.
I think there was something to it. I think Fontaine deserves some credit as a region beyond just its characters and that stuff, but if enjoying the time with the side characters is what makes Natlan go, then maybe I just need to keep going till I get to that more, and that will help.
And the reality is, it almost has nothing to do with the main story. The fact of the matter is, the newest region just came out. It's going to have its own personal story with what's the new character, Verisa, whatever her name is, the like wrestler gal. And I'm sure Eon San will be in there. But I suspect that will still be a very engaging story that I'll probably get to at some point. And that region will feel very good. There'll be a theme. It'll play itself out in a little 3-part act, and it'll feel very good. That is released after the main story in Natlan. It's probably going to have almost nothing to do with Natlan, or it'll maybe touch on some of the fallouts, maybe, because you could do them in any order, technically. So they're kind of self-contained. That's kind of the beauty of Natlan, is that the main story is kind of whatever. Like, you just do the individual spots. And like I said, I still haven't done the Sacred Sakura in Inazuma. I haven't done the little fey spirits and whatever. I have skipped. I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. Like, if it's not the main quest, I tend to skip it. And I've done all of them in Natlan because it's what gave that region flavor, and it got me into it. If I wanted to see what Chaska's quest was, I had to do the one in the world, and they were all tied together. That got me engaged. So if their goal is to get people like me who will skip whatever random bullshit world quest they have for a region, I think they won. They got me. So it's hard for me to say that it's not working, but it's clearly not working on everybody. So I don't know. That's tough.
Mm-hmm. For Star Rail, it's a little tougher at the moment, again, even for the guy who's most in on it. However, they have already started announcing the anniversary rewards, and that continues to be the standard bearer for anniversary stuff out of the 3. Now, ZZZ hasn't hit it yet, so we'll see what happens when we get there.
Yeah.
But Genshin has consistently been dragged for being underwhelming in its anniversary stuff, and I think deservedly so. Yes, people always want more free stuff, but I would say pretty consistently Genshin's been underwhelming. When in an area where gacha games usually kind of just like throw things at their players, Genshin's been like,
Yeah.
Whereas Star Rail's like, hey, you want a free Ruan Mei or Luoka? And I'm like, I actually would like a Ruan Mei, even though I still don't like her character because I never pulled her way back when I got Blade 2 years ago, and my team suffer for it. So between that and all the pulls they give out and some of the events they will actually get to, which are going to feel like, an oasis in the desert, that's at least going to be exciting. It'll probably reboot some interest in the game for some people who have lapsed. It's not going to fix some of the main issues, but it at least puts a Band-Aid on some of them. And again, it's a reminder of like, hey, at least you're getting like a free 5-star character because Lord knows that's not happening in Genshin.
True.
And they have the Fate crossover coming up, which I think will also be interesting for people, and it won't feel half-assed like Aloy did.
Yeah.
So there are some things to still be excited about with Star Rail. They need some change of direction to address the bigger issues, but there are some stuff where I'm like, okay, those things are going to be cool and probably well done.
Yeah. I mean, I'll probably log in to get a free Luocha since I don't have him. They've talked about improving older characters, which none of the games have done. Obviously, ZZZ hasn't been around long enough to really do that. But Lord knows there's some Genshin characters from 1 and 2.0 that could probably use a buff. So, like, it's hard to hate the HSR team for doing that. I wish it wasn't overshadowed by some of the power scaling, some of the newer characters. We never touched on the Casterus thing. Global passives, that's a slippery slope.
True, we didn't bring that up. It's good you mentioned it.
Because if they start any character that they make that has a global passive runs the risk of, like, just to touch on it, potentially meaning that they're like a must pull. My understanding, I haven't played enough gacha games to know this, is that a lot of other gacha games would say like have like a base or like a skill tree that you, the player, have, and you'll level it up as you go. So that's where you get your global passives. The fact that HSR is maybe tying those to characters you would have to pull for is a little concerning. That's not a system that I would want to see in Genshin or ZZZ.
Give us money to get this passive.
It's what, like $250 to $300 for a 5-star on average if you're paying actual money and not saving up pulls and the like.
Like, ZZZ is already a little risky business by making Miyabi sort of a must pull because she's broken, but they've also been pretty decent. Like, Anbi, like, if you get the right team, you can kind of compete with Miyabi. But if Miyabi has the right team, she's going to blow everybody else out of the water. And they've made her the single Void Hunter and the single most powerful character in the game. You can argue that's a power scaling or a power creep thing, but so far it has just been her, and it's sort of obvious that she was always going to be that way. They denote it in the game. She feels special because she should be special, I guess is what I'm saying. So it doesn't feel too bad. If that continues and we end up with like 10 characters that are must pulls, so God forbid you didn't save up, that's going to feel kind of bad. But you're only ever really going to have like 3 teams in ZZZ. It's whatever. HSR making a global passive that revives your characters kind of feels like the, oh, I'm sorry, did you join the game after she came out and you're a new player? Well, fortunately, this content's hard and kind of anticipates you dying. So I hope you got her. Hope you're ready to struggle until she gets a rerun and you save up.
And there have been some whispers of like maybe they'll have a cap on the number of global passives you can have, so that it's just like choosing between them, and you can, if you have these more like exotic and fancy characters, then you can decide what might be the best for a certain memory of chaos or whatever.
Yep.
That would at least limit the damage to a certain extent, but you're right, it can be a slippery slope, and we have no idea if they're going to put any caps on it or if it's just going to be a free-for-all of, all right, have 9 different global passives on your account, and good luck if you're not a whale.
Correct.
Mhm.
Like, because again, if they had come out and said, hey, yeah, we know the global passive is a little iffy, you're only ever going to have one up. There's going to be like a selector once we put the second one in. If they were a little vocal about that, I would feel far more confident. But the fact that they haven't makes me think that they don't want to rule that out. And that's the part that scares me a little bit about HSR.
It feels like a decision that you make when you're flagging.
Yes,
These games are not struggling yet.
Which is weird because their game, I feel like, has been doing better than ever. And like you talk about, they were being incredibly generous. As much as I've stepped away from the game, Penacony was phenomenal. I feel like they've done really well. They've invested a lot of money in getting these stories, these worlds built. It feels like it was really hitting its stride, and so it kind of sucks that with all the negatives we've discussed. I do think there are still pros with HSR. It's still super quick to just hop on, do some auto battles, move on. I still think the story has some of the most grandiose, thought-provoking ideas. Genshin is never going to really be able to meet it. And ZZZ tends to have much more personal, character-driven stories.
Yeah.
Whereas like Star Rail's talking about like the finality of death and what it means to like even exist in the universe, and you're like, we're going places with this that are kind of interesting. It's like endgame anime JRPG stuff where like you're going to talk to the gods and you're going to have a philosophical discussion with them. Like, it's interesting. It is offering something that's cool. I wish we got more of that and less of the little purple fuck stealing my treasures, because that's what I care about.
And ZZZ has the least wrong with it, so there's the least that needs to be said about its success. But the only thing I'll say that I've really struck me recently was like, I've wanted to pull every character. Every single one. Now, there are some I haven't really, like, let's see. What's the name of the stun cop who you had to mash the button for?
Chingy,
yeah. Like, I didn't really think that was that appealing of a playstyle for me personally. I thought Trigger was pretty fun as far as his combat style, but I didn't care much for like his voice acting for some reason. I don't know what it was.
Who? Not Trigger. You said Trigger.
Or what's the guy that fights stuff? He's got a
Lighter.
name.
Lighter.
There we go. Thank you. Liked Lighter in fighting, but didn't really like his voice acting that much for some reason. Couldn't tell you why. But even so, I was like, oh, this would be a fun character to have. This would be neat to have. So like, props to them, because that has not happened in either of the other 2 games. There are some characters that come out for both HSR and Genshin, and I'm like, like that's just a pass for me. And I'm not really thinking about it. Where at least every single character's made me go, oh, let me try the trial out and kind of see, and this is neat, and I like this aspect, and well, that's not for me, so I'll probably wait, just because there's going to be another character that comes along that checks all the boxes. I'm going to have to have them.
And I'll be honest, like there are a couple of misses for me. I guess I should mention, like, I think Yanagi's the biggest miss for me in that game. She's like big, she's busty, she's sort of got that whole thing going on, but her relationship with Sokaku, just the whole Section 6 overall, really charming, and her kind of being the straight man in that scenario is perfect. She's kind of just got to be the way she is. So even characters that I don't like, probably never pull, sometimes even mechanically good, so I would still be tempted to. They're not mechanically overpowered, but Yanagi's playstyle, like being able to parry as you switch stances and being able to disorder when it's not there, she can be fun to play still. And she still, as a character, I come to like. There are new characters that come out, like Vivian, that I'm thinking she might be the kind of like cold gothic, too cool, kind of like, I don't know, gothic Lolita vampire kind of vibe she gives off. And then you meet her in the game, not that at all. In fact, she's what I call the Gap Mo, where they're like surprisingly cute in a weird way. She's got a whole thing with her. Trigger ends up being incredibly wholesome and probably has one of the most well written. I've seen some people break it down on Reddit. I won't touch on all of it, but like as far as like a character her character arc, her story, which takes place in the past, of her sort of meeting somebody that's very similar from where she comes from. They're kind of diametrically opposed on philosophy. This is sort of like a Korra versus Amon in like the first season, where like she thinks one thing, he thinks another, and you sort of see the pros and cons of both. But then by the end of Korra season 1, they're just sort of like, and everything resolved, and you're like, did it really? In Trigger's case, her and the other person, they both sort of end up seeing they're both kind of wrong and kind of right, and the trigger you get at the end addresses both, and that's who she is today. And it was genuinely touching. I cried a couple times during that story. It's good stuff. It's some of the best, most personal writing that they have. You don't get that in the other games, unfortunately. Star Rail's a little bit too high-minded, and Genshin's too busy explaining why these 3 boxes are over here and you need to go get them or whatever. But like it's the writing feels more mature and nuanced in ZZZ, despite the fact that it's like a comic book half the time and you're just like shooting things and blowing shit up like when you get into combat. But I really like that about ZZZ. It's kept me engaged so much more in the main story. I look forward to the main story, whereas I don't always in some of the other ones because I'm not sure what I'm gonna get. If I don't know what I'm gonna get in ZZZ, but it's gonna be probably personal and probably hit harder than I think it's going to be and throw some swerves at me. And the characters are going to be good. They're going to be lovable somehow. Aster Yao is a bit of a princess, but she's like really down to earth in so many different ways. You grow to like her, even if you maybe weren't going to like her at first. It's good. I don't know. Even the main characters you kind of grow to like. Wise and Belle. They're interesting as protagonists go. They're not Paimon. You don't hate to see them. So I don't know. It's winning in that regard as far as they put out characters that I would pull for. I have to make hard choices of like, I like this character, but I can't justify pulling for them. Like I would definitely pull for Ellen Jo. I did her story mission, her kind of like struggling through like college or whatever she's doing through with all of her friends. And they're like talking about like, oh, I'm doing all the school stuff. And she's like trying to balance her work life, her school life. It's really fun. It's really entertaining, and seeing how all of her friends like start to react with it when they finally realize what she's doing, and all the kind of hijinks that goes on when they don't get it, but like you're trying to like play it cool, and really fun. Like, and it's a very different story than what you get with Trigger. Like, but that's great. It's so many mixes of genres. I could gush about ZZZ for a while, frankly. That's the problem here. So
I think I have Trigger on the brain because as of when this video comes out, yesterday we'll have posted a polls video for Trigger where Jason and I had some considerable resources set aside, and you'll have to go watch it to see how we did. But it's pretty good, so you should go watch it. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
There's at least one single-digit poll in it.
Yes.
I hate it.
So go check that out, or the other poll videos we've done. We have some that have done pretty big numbers. Furina was one of them. The big Furina one was one of them because she was also a super popular character and has just gotten better with time.
Yep.
And of course, her voice actress helped start one of the main things that's helping ZZZ get through this without having too many voices get replaced or muted. So all of this connects in some way. But that is the end of our mini rant / podcast for the Hoyo games, since Jason and I have dabbled in all 3 of them, some pretty extensively. Doug's been around them enough to know them, and of course was maybe the most serious Genshin player of the 3 of us.
Yeah, for true.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah.
So if they lost him for a while, that also tells you about the direction of things, maybe to a certain extent. But let us know in the comments what you think. Obviously, some of this stuff has been out there pretty prominently. Others you may have only heard about here. Some of it's smaller, some of it's big picture. But want to hear from you as well, and we'll respond to some of the comments down there. So let us know what you think.
Yeah,
Like
let
and
us
subscribe.
let us know what kind of characters you like. If you've done these games, what are your pros and cons? If you found a character that you like that you didn't think you were going to. I know I have, at least in ZZZ. It's happened a couple times in Genshin too. But yeah, what's your rant, I guess? I'm interested to see what other people have to say, because there are certain things that I get blindsided with in these games where I read a Reddit post and I'm like, shit, I never thought of that, but they're right, like, I don't know. Hit us up with your brain blasts.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I'm pretty sure all 3 of us are willing to come back and address and talk about what you guys bring up too. So
Yeah.
We respond to most comments. Every now and then some of them are stupid. But, for the most part, we respond to a lot of stuff that's down there, whether it's on this or the podcast in the live format or whatever. So like and subscribe to the channel. It's my one chance to plug. We talked for 70 minutes. It feels earned. You can hit the bell for notifications. No one does that. I don't do that. I'm a YouTube freak and I don't do that. But you can. It would help the channel. And yeah, comment down below. We'll respond. See you next time.
Take it
Later.
easy.